If you're really a Christian, then you know what to do. You know that you're doing bad, and you know it purposely.
like when I was speaking here, like they said like God no longer calls us his servants but his friends. So like if you go to your friends for like accountability, you should probably first person you should probably go to is God and Jesus. You see.
Like okay, the thing is like like how some people like if they pray like they might not hear God's voice like some people because their faith is not good. Like how so like I'm telling God I don't know what to do. Will you help me? And if my faith is like really low, how am I supposed to know?
It's not like your faith is low. It's that you're insecure about your faith. Like like you know how you're insecure about yourself. You're insecure about like, oh, do I really trust God? Do I, like
one part of you says you trust him, but the other doesn't.
Yeah, like you're fighting with yourself, and so like.
But I will say this, like. Even for like let's say if a person was a new Christian, like a person that just became a Christian, right? And his faith is still kind of more or less like a roller coaster type situation.
But isn't that how all everyone's?
Yeah, but when you're talking about it's more of unstable, you could say. There's like an unstable amount, like it's like fluctuates like crazy or something. But for that person, right? I mean, God is going to meet up to you on your level. Does that make sense? He doesn't. He knows we can't meet up to his, so he meets down onto yours. Does that make sense? So if he will answer, like it's honestly, he will answer back the way that your faith will, like to the level of faith that you show.
But what if your faith is like really low? Like you just got to know him, but you're not like all the way up there like other people, Like let's say that Achins, like they have like really good faith, but you're not there yet. But they can actually hear his voice, but like I can't hear his voice, like that kind of thing, Like how will I recognize, like if I'm asking God, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Will you tell me? How do I know, or how do I hear his voice? How do I know if that's the right?
Trust your heart.
Well, it takes time. It takes discernment. I mean, it takes time for you to recognize. Like it's like when we were kids, and your dad or mom are calling you. At first, you don't listen to them, right? Because you're still trying to recognize somebody, right? Mm-hmm. But like if you've been with the person long enough, like if I turned off the lights right now and Justin was yelling at me or something, I would be easily able to tell out it's Justin. It's because I've known his voice, because we've been close, we're that close. And the same thing applies with God. I mean, the more you honestly get close with God and the more you spend time with him and the longer it's been, I guess you could say like it's easier. It's a lot easier.
I mean, the more you allow yourself to let God in, to let the Spirit in, is when everything just comes into play. When you open your heart fully to God, and you start growing in him, then you start wanting to read the Bible, then you start wanting to pray, and then you learn things that are like, oh, why didn't I learn this earlier? And then it just starts building, and that's how you become a better Christian, a better person.
I will say this.
Okay, so like I don't know, I'm pretty sure it was like a revival when I asked I was like, I can't really hear the voice of God, and then like he was saying, most of the time it's like indirect, and like in the Bible it says you have to be still, and like just like sometimes the response will come, like you just have to you just have to like shut everything off, clear your mind, think about what's going on, and another good.
How do you clear your mind? Because I can't really do that.
Like, distractions will always come.
Yeah, distractions because the distractions like that was like you just kind of gotta like pray about it, and then. There's like another thing.
Even in prayer, when you pray, something comes up. For me, like when I pray, some distractions always comes up. Then I lost my part. Then I have to go back. Like, how do you clear your mind?
Like
as long as you keep on going back. Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. You go. Okay, well, another thing, God doesn't just speak through voices. He can speak through the Bible and all those things. And
like you can actually hear
other people and everything like that. It's not like ooh, sweet.
It's not like breathing.
like,
Like, it's the Bible.
stop trying to be a wannabe.
Like, I know, like, sometimes, like, I'll just, like, flip open the Bible and, like, the verse I need will be right there. It's like God speaking through me like that. And, like, a metaphor that they use was, like, it's like when you were a kid and, like, you're watching TV, right? And, like, yeah, like, when he said your parents would say, hey, take out the trash or something, and, like, you wouldn't listen at first, like, you know? It's like, unless you first turn your attention at God, who's, like, you know, looking at you and, like, turn off your distraction, and you look at, you know, your parent, and your parents like, hey, take out the trash, then only will you listen. Like, but, like, it's like kind of like the world is our TV. It's like we're just focusing on that kind of. And, like, even if God is watching, we're just.
That's really good.
It's like even if, like, God is saying something, we're not going to hear. We're just like, yeah, whatever. And it's like you keep on watching TV. But then until you turn off the TV and kind of look at God, then it's like then you'll actually hear the word of God more clear.
And basically, also think about this. Before I talk to you about lust, right? What is lust? It's basically materialist things that that the devil put on earth. So basically, TV was not God-given. It was not like, say, God made it right there, right? So basically, that's human-made. That's materialistic things. So basically, that's there to distract you always. That is always there to be like, hey, Christina, look here, look here. Even that chair right there, all you have to do is bump in it and you lose your focus. Everything in this world right now around us is basically materialistic. Those materialistic thing is basically devil's toys. Basically, devil's ball to throw it at you and say, hey, Christina, look over here.
But
So,
what if you're a person with like really low faith and Satan's like trying to attack you? Like
You know, Satan doesn't. Okay. Oh yeah. No.
Satan doesn't attack you head on. He needs God's permission all the time. Satan doesn't get on you head on. He needs God's permission to actually come to you.
But God can let him get on. Like, how does it get God's
Okay, I just want to like this is like.
See, don't let your focus be solely. Don't be like, I guess your motivation to get closer to God just to be like, oh, let me hear His voice. Let me hear His voice. Don't be so concerned about hearing His voice, because when you are, ironically, you don't hear it because you're so like. I don't know.
What if you want to hear His voice before the world ends and you want to go to heaven and you want to be with Him?
If you want,
what were you saying?
you will eventually hear His voice.
It's God's will, basically.
God's will.
He can't just.
You cannot control the hand of God. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you're asking us for a process, if you're trying to ask us to a process like, oh, how is it done? How do you hear the voice of God? I promise you, none of us here can honestly give you a straight up definite answer, because none of us here can control the hand of God. None of us here can control God and how He works. God has much more free will than any of us here. And He can choose whether He wants to honestly speak to you audibly, or if He wants to talk to you by His word, or by a friend, or whoever. That's the honest truth.
Okay, but I don't know who said that. Someone said Satan, he gets the permission from God.
Yeah.
But God doesn't give Satan permission to attack us.
No.
Remember
This
in
is
the Bible at
Job?
Job?
This is Job. Like Job asked. I mean, not Job. You can say it. This is the other thing.
Yeah, go ahead. You learn something. Come on.
No, because you know how, like, in the Bible it talks about how Jesus, like, God was, no, what was it? The devil was talking to, Satan was talking to God, whatever. And then he was like, look at that man, you know, he's so faithful to you just because he has money and, you know, you gave him everything. Did anyone read that chapter?
Yeah.
Is it Job?
No, yeah.
You want to finish it off?
Okay, so Satan's saying to God, and he's like, man, look at this guy. He has everything, you know, he has all these kids, he has all this wealth, he has everything in the world, you know, like of course he's not going to lose his faith in you. You gave him everything. And God was like, bro.
But
like,
he has the
calm.
faith because he has all this stuff. That's
No, just
Wait for it. Wait for it.
It's better. Okay, so Satan talks, and keep going, okay, so Satan asked God, you know, like, let me do something, let me show you that he's not really faithful. And God was like, okay, you can take everything, but don't harm his life. And then, so, in literally, like, in like 5 minutes, less than 5 minutes, Job loses everything. He loses his house, he loses his children, then he loses all his cattle and animals. And 3 servants come and say, oh, Job, you lost this, and I was the only one to survive to tell you. And so but this is the coolest thing. Job rips off, he rips his clothes and shakes his head and says, praise be to God, the Lord giveth and taketh away. He just, everything was taken away, but he still had faith in God and said, praise be to the Lord.
And going with 2 Corinthians, I think it's 2 Corinthians, 10:13 says, it basically says God does not give you more than you can handle. He does not give you more than you can bear. And when He is giving it to you, when you are facing whatever it is you're going through, He always provides a way out. It's not like God is just being like, oh, here, let the mess happen. I'm just going to kick back and watch TV. No, God is coming there and He's like, don't worry, it's what you can handle.
What was that again? 2 Corinthians or 1 Corinthians?
I think it's 2 Corinthians 10:13. And
No, it's not that.
So, can we get back on topic?
Do I feel like judging? Yeah.
I concur.
But this all ties into
no,
one
but
thing.
what I'm trying to say is that it's not about it's not like God is just going to leave you empty-handed.
Yeah.
If you trust, it's about trusting God. It's like God has been with humanity since the very beginning, since the fall, and He will be with humanity till the end. And that's what the Bible's been saying over and over and over. The biblical word is redemptive history. It's God saying, I am here with you always, right behind you, every step of the way. Do you trust me? This is the ultimate question for every person. Do you trust me? And how far?
Even if you trust Him or not, He's still going to be there, right?
Yeah, that also goes along with Isaiah 43 verse 2 is remember what I read, and it was like, when you pass through the waters, I'll be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. So it's like God will be there through every situation, through the good times and the bad times. God will be there.
There's a song that says, cast your burdens on the Lord.
I think this whole thing ties into I think God wants us to know that everything that we come to get, everything that we're talking about right now is just showing how great He is, how big and mighty is He, and that's why He is worthy to judge. And I think the whole thing is when we see how worthy God is, we see how glorious and mighty He, and we see how we're a speck of dust on this earth, then we should realize and we should humble ourselves to be a Christian, to be a better Christian, to not judge, but to love. Because there's only one person that's mighty enough to judge.
But see, most of the people, they see God as God of only judging, but they don't see God loving God.
That's what we need to do. God's love is great enough for us, so we need to share it and show it to other people.
Like what they said, they said God. People think that God's only there to judge, but the first thing God said to Adam and Eve was, "You are free to eat from it." But everyone always thinks is you can't eat from this pear, you can't eat from this one tree. But the first thing He did say, "You're free to eat from any single tree I give you." So if He gives you freedom, it's just
I just have to choose it. But you have the right to choose it.
yeah, it's intellectual property from the tree.
So back to topic. What we were saying. Is it how our parents are how you're saying that you tell your brother something to correct them? Isn't that still judging your brother and sister?
You're older than them.
You're instructing them.
You have it's kind of like
It's called divine right.
yeah.
The eldest, prejudice.
Hey, let's see this at a coach's perspective. If you were a coach, you're always there for them. You ain't gonna actually leave them and say, you go out there, do your thing. Coach is always going to be there to actually push you, keep going, I'll teach you what you do. Basically, that is your, that's your training book right there. when you read it on and on, when you learn from the Bible, it's basically God talking to you. That's basically God's letter to you. He's speaking through you from the book.
I mean,
That's basically His words.